All right, so now that we've gone over like the basics, let me tell you what I did or how I handled this. So, really conveniently, our curriculum is broken up into these strands that we can use as units, and the way that you use them is your own deal. But I just use them as each strand is basically its own unit. So I introduce the performance objective and the mastery of the learning objectives at the beginning of the unit, which means day one of strand one, I provide my grading checklist. And my grading checklist matches my grade book. So what I did was divide my grade book into three categories. One for mastery, which I teach my students is like knowledge, like it's showing that you know and understand something. The second category is skill, showing that you can do something or that you've demonstrated ability in a certain area. And then the third category is factors for success, which is healthy and positive behaviors that the student used while they were working through this unit. And that shows you a little bit of my teaching philosophy, which is not really what we're getting into here. So your categories might look a lot different from mine. And then the students provide themselves grades at the end of the unit with me, and they provide themselves three grades: a grade for mastery, a grade for skill, and a grade for factors for success. And any assignments or activities or anything that we've done, like their performance objective, that product that they create is evidence for that grade. So if I just show um, my grading checklist. So this is my grading checklist for strand one, standard one of tap one. And it shows the mastery column. You can see this is all stuff that they are demonstrating knowledge, that they know something, they understand it, they can hold it inside their head. Skill is a little different. And skill is where their grade for the performance objectives really comes in. So I look at what the state strands and standards says for the performance objective, what it should do, and then I break that out into bullet points for the students to show me. So in the skill category, most of those bullet points come from their interview, which is the performance objective. And they have to show me how they did each of these things. Some people worry that students will kind of fudge themselves and they'll say, yeah, I did it. And that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, that's when the rubric or the grading checklist becomes very important, because then you have to ask them, okay, show me where in your work you met this standard. And it helps if you have a little student work there with you to say, okay, here's an example of somebody who hit proficient or missed it. How does your work compare to this sample? And how does that demonstrate that you've met the criteria on the rubric? Um, Honestly, kids have a hard time. I mean, this is a really difficult thing to BS. So generally, you won't get very many kids trying to fudge it. They will know whether they did it or not, and they will be ready to tell you that they did it or that they didn't do it, that they missed part of it, which is okay. Like, that's part of the reflective learning process. And your grading philosophy might say that they will get a chance, if they realize that they missed something, to revise and bring it back for another grading conference. I don't know, that's on you. But they will be self-aware. They're better at that than we are. We have this tendency to give them the benefit of the doubt because we love them dearly. But for them, there is no doubt. They know exactly whether they did it or not. They know exactly whether they thought about that bullet point or whether they were intentional about making sure that was part of their interview. So there is no doubt for them to give themselves the benefit of. And as long as you've done your job in being very clear on your explanations, they can do their job in being very honest with themselves and recognizing it's there or it's not. And then you can see in the factors for success, these are just healthy things, reminding students that it's not just about the performance, it's about taking care of yourself while you're performing or while you're working. And these are just things that I think are important. Um, as future professionals, so that's why I include that in my grade book. So yeah, that's my strategy. That is how I did this. And then there are two different ways to have these grading conferences, or two different ways that I've used so far. One is to have an interview. I like this because it's very personalized, and you are guided by the rubric, by the grading checklist, but you might ask different questions in order to accommodate different students' needs during that interview. The basic outline for it is going to be the same. They're proving what grade they've earned in each one of those grading categories, and they're showing you evidence from the quarter or from the unit to show you, or to demonstrate and make connections between the grade and themselves. It's also very authentic. It's a really authentic experience to sit down with an adult and tell them, not ask them, like, can I please have a C? It's, I know that I've earned a C, and let me show you why. It's an incredible experience, and it's awesome. It's a chance for you to really get to know your students one on one. And it's convenient because, there are so many things that your class can be doing. It could be a work day, it can be a free day, there are some amazing teaching documentaries online, even just on YouTube, that are for teacher education programs that I often put on while I'm doing my grading conference or my interview day for the unit. But it's a really in-depth, personal, one-on-one look at your student. And these aren't long. My grading interviews, I usually go between 5 and 10 minutes to a student. However, if you're planning to do these interviews during class time, then it does work better if you have small classes, especially if you only want to take one day for interviews. And I know that with just a semester class and pushing toward that skills test, these TAP classes are pretty fast paced. So yeah, the interview is going to be more feasible with small classes. Another option is to have them turn in a written self-assessment. The benefits here are that it gives the students lots of processing time. So as you're giving them time to work, or even if you assign it as homework, they get more of a chance to think about exactly what they want to say, and they can write it out and then see that they don't like it and go back and erase it and fancy it up, or make sure that what they're telling you is exactly what they mean. In an interview, they can feel kind of on the spot. It does give a chance for some deeper thought. So they have the question, they're looking at the question, they have a chance to think about the question before they answer it, which means that it works well in larger classes. Honestly, I did a combination of them. Depending on the pacing of my unit, I would either say, okay, I have time for an interview day where I'm talking with each student individually, or for others, I would say this lends itself more to a written reflection and evaluation. The best part, and hopefully I say this more than once, the best part about this is that if you are one of those teachers who's having your students get up and teach a lot, um, filming themselves teaching, either you with a phone, or if you're lucky enough like me to have a swivel, then those are amazing, and then having them watch the video of themselves teaching as they prepare for their grading conference, as they decide, okay, in my interview, really, how did I do? And did I get better over the quarter with my different opportunities to teach my classmates? That's the gold. That's where really the money is students reflecting on their own teaching, their experiences. Yeah, it's great to reflect on all of their work, and all of the learning benefits are there no matter what. But if we can grow a generation of teachers who is actually comfortable watching themselves on film and evaluating themselves, and knowing that other people are going to evaluate themselves on film, that is going to take teaching in this country to another level of professionalism and of really self-awareness as a teachers. So that's my favorite thing. And students can be doing that, watching the film and preparing, whether they're preparing for an interview with you or preparing and writing out in a written document. I'll show you really quickly what an example of that written document might be. So this is for TAP 1 Strand 6. And notice I still have a grading checklist here, and then there's just a text box that they can fill up, and it's a Google Doc, so it's going to grow with them. And I just have each student make a copy of this Google Doc, which is an easy thing to do through Canvas. You can just actually include a link that when they click on it, it says make a copy, and then they can fill it up themselves. And it's still broken down into the 3 different categories. And then they just have to defend their answer. What grade have you earned? And then explain and use these bullet points to explain yourself. So this is a written version of a self-assessment. For TAP 2, which I actually wish I had done this in TAP 1, but learning as I go. For TAP 2, I actually had a mastery quiz on Canvas, and then they did a self-assessment for the skill category and the factors for success category, which I liked a lot. It's a nice little integration between your traditional grade book, like you do the assignment and the grade just appears there, and self-assessment, like comparing your work to other student work to the rubric. So yeah, if we go back to my strategy of 3 categories, then there's a quiz on Canvas that I create that kind of mimics the types of questions that they will see on the state test, just in that unit alone. And then that grade goes into the gradebook. We use Canvas, so it just automatically puts itself into the gradebook. And then the rest of their grade comes from their self-assessment. So they assess their performance objective, their skill demonstration, and then they assess their factors for success, their healthy behaviors. I feel like this really helped us get ready for the state test. And plus, huge benefit, all of those unit quizzes I used on review days. I was like, okay, so I made another module on Canvas and was like, check it out. Look at all of the quizzes that we've done so far. Take them and retake them and remind yourselves what types of questions come from each unit. And plus, we have Quizlet and Kahoot and all that. But so that's kind of a combination way. So if you're like, I really don't trust my students to give themselves the grades all the way, or I really want something that's like quantitative data in the grade book, or you just really want them to prepare well for the state test, then you can combine knowledge, which is on the test, with self-assessment of performance. And then next, like this is what I'm looking forward to, changes that I'm going to make next year. I want to get better at this next year. So I saved a lot of student work from this year that I can use as examples, since we should have the same strands and standards for next year and the same performance objectives. So I can be more explicit and more clear about what the expectations are, and I can give better feedback if I have mentor text and student work as examples. And then I think it would be really cool. This isn't something that I can do myself, but anybody who's watching this video and this module can officially be helpful for me and us in this. If we have shared rubrics for performance objectives, or if maybe like the state provided rubrics for performance objectives, because I just want to make sure that in my clear expectations, I'm assessing what the state is going for, that I'm not going beyond the mark, or that I'm not going too easy on my kids. So I think it would be really cool if, as TAP teachers, we had collective, collaborative, shared rubrics. And then I also want to include more meta discussion, because remember, the point of this is for students to really understand what assessment is and how it works, and then also understand what reflection is and how it works. And so I want to have more of those conversations. What has been your experience evaluating yourself? How do you know that this is what the checklist or the rubric actually means? How do you think a student who didn't have these conversations would interpret this rubric or would interpret this task without the rubric? I just want to have more of those meta discussions, making it clear that this self-assessment is about preparing them to be teachers, to create assessments, to give assessments, and then to reflect on the measurable learning that they're seeing in their classrooms. And that is it. So that this part 2 is just mainly focused on what I have done. Maybe you take the principles and stuff from the part 1 video and apply it in a totally different way, in which case I would be really excited if you would share with me any of your resources or creations or awesome ideas. I just think that self-assessment is more valuable to students than turning in work and getting a grade back. Being really self-aware and critical, and it not in like a mean way, but in like a thinking carefully way, and to advocate for themselves and to communicate on a professional level. It's so valuable and so important, especially just one last plug for watching film of themselves teaching. Incredibly useful. They hate it in the beginning, but it is incredibly useful. You cannot deny what is there on the videotape. So yeah, that is self-assessment revolution, making assessment and reflection visible and powerful and conscious, the center of our classroom. Thanks. Bye.